If a tree falls in the server, does the client hear it? Not unless you use an RPC. Today we are writing the logic that actually makes the game playable, synchronizing questions, answers, and state changes across the internet. Now our players are connected, but they're stuck in the lobby. In this video, we're building the state machine's networking logic. We will learn how to use authority RPCs to force all clients to change screens instantly, and any peer RPCs to let players submit their answers back to the server. Now only the host should be able to start the game. Let's wire up our start quiz button now. Now open up our main game GD script. Now back in our main game TSCN, we need our start button, which is going to be in our lobby UI. We need to scroll up to the top of our main game GD, and we need a reference to this start button. So click, hold, drag, control, drop. We need to update our on connected to server. So in our filter methods, we can go to on connected to server. And with our hide UI is fine. So right between our host register, we're going to enter in the server, the host sees the start button. Great, and we do that by saying if multiplayer is server. Well, then we're going to show our start button. Start button dot show. Oh, we named it start game button, didn't we? Start game button dot show. Perfect. Save that. Now we go back into our ready function. Look at our filter methods ready. And then we're going to go to our button connections. And we need to add before we do that, we're going to write the on start game pressed function. So we'll go back down to right by our host button pressed right here. Right underneath that, we're going to write another function called function on start game pressed. There we go. So it's going to call the game manager to start the loop. We're going to do that with a game manager start game RPC. And we're going to write this function soon. We haven't written it yet, but we will. We're just going to link it up right now. So we're going to write that in a second. But then we're going to go to our ready function here. And in our button connections, we're going to add in our start button, start game button, pressed function, connect. And then to the one we just wrote, on start game pressed. Perfect. And then when we disconnect, we want to make sure to hide the start button. So let's go to our disconnect from server. Our filter methods on disconnected from server. Click that. Now in our reset, if we spell reset correctly, our reset menu buttons, right underneath disconnect button hide, we also want to hide the start button. Start game button. There we go. Dot hide. There we go. Now it's hidden when we're disconnected. Go ahead and save that. All right, now this is the core concept of the video. If the host just changes current phase question, well, only the host sees the question. The clients stay in the lobby, and we need an RPC to force everyone to change phases together. So we're going to open up our game manager now, GD script, and we need to make this script capable of networking. We're going to let everyone know our current phase, and then let only the host start the game. So we're going to update the code here. Now right below our sync player list in our RPC section, we're going to let everyone know the current phase. We do that, and we're going to do RPC, let the authority handle this one, and we're going to call to the local machine, and then we're going to make it reliable. Perfect. Function is going to be called function change phase. And it's going to need a new phase ID. be passed into it. ID. That's going to be the current phase is going to equal the new phase. That way it would change and let everybody know we did. Now before we start the game, we want a way to lock the lobby so we don't have strangers or anyone, stragglers, coming in our game after we've already started it. So go back in our network manager here. I'm going to scroll down to the bottom. And right above our debug section, we're going to write a function called lock, set lobby lock. And this is going to locked is going to be a bool. So now we're going to make sure there's actually a lobby to lock. Perfect. So we're going to check if the current lobby ID equals 0. Well, then we know it's not a lobby. We don't have a lobby. So we're just going to return out of that. So then if it's true, though, there is a lobby, we're going to say Steam. Can you set this lobby Steam dot set this lobby to locked, please? So set lobby joinable there. And our current lobby ID, so it knows which one we're talking about. Well, we want to set that to the opposite of what it is, which means if it's not locked, it'll be locked. And if it is locked, it'll unlock. So then we need to send a log to say, hey, this is what we're doing. So the lobby lock state is, well, plus string. We're going to turn this into a string, locked. That'll tell us if it's locked or not locked in our debug panels. So we know exactly what's happening. So go ahead and save that. Then back in our game manager, we're going to be able to start the game now. So it's the function that's going to be checking inputs. So we'll go right after the end region here of the RPC calls. We're going to do a function start game. RPC. Okay. Now this is going to be, say, only the host can call this. So if multiplayer is is server, sorry. Multiplayer is server. Well, we're going to set the network manager set lobby lock to true. So we're going to lock the door. So lock the door. Lock the door. All right. And then we're going to change phase after the door is locked. Change phase.rpc. In the game phase, then we're going to change it to, when you start the first game, question. All right, go ahead and save that. And now that we're in the question phase, we need, well, a question. So we're going to create a simple list and have the host send the text to everyone. Still in the game manager.gd, we're going to add a question database and a signal. So scroll back up to the top. So for now, we're just going to get things working. We can make this pretty later and more dynamic, but for now, we're just going to add a hard code couple questions and answers into a small database in our game manager.gd script. When you want to expand this with hundreds of questions, there are better ways. If anyone is interested, we can make those couple bonus videos on that subject. For now, we're just going to add another signal up top here. Signal. And that's going to be question received. Spell received correctly. And it's going to be question text, so Q text, and answers. Those are the parameters we want to send in the question received. And in our variable section here, well, we're going to need a variable of the current question index. We'll first set it to 0, so it'll start at the start of the not the dictionary, the database. And then after the question index, we want to make our question database. So question db equals, it's going to be angle brackets, enter down. I'm going to use curly brackets, enter down. So the first thing we want to know is the text of the question. The text is going to be, well, the first question we'll just use, what engine is this? And then we separate, comma separated, And the second thing we want to know is what answers are we going to give the players to choose from. So answers, then we're going to add another container here. So an array of answers. The first one's going to be, well, Unity, comma, Unreal, comma, Godot, comma, or say Game Maker. And then comma to get down to the next section, which is going to be what's the correct answer. Correct. And well, the index is, remember, as programmers, we have 0, 1, 2. And we know this is the Godot engine. At least I would hope so. So the correct answer is 2, which is the index of Godot. And well, let's at least have 2 questions here. So a comma, then we need another curly braces there. And the first thing we need is the text of the question. So which RPC mode means server only? All right, comma, and the answers that we're going to allow to be chosen, or buttons in the array, are reliable, any peer, authority, or call local. Great. And if you remember, the correct answer is 0, 1, 2. Oh, maybe we'll move that actually. We'll put this in 3. So we don't have 2 of the same answers in a row. How about that? 0, 1, 2, and 3. 3 is our correct answer. Perfect. And that's the index of authority. There we go. Then we need to go to do our change phase function here. And we needed to send the question data if we are entering the question phase. So after our phase ID, enter down. So if we just started the question phase, send the data. So if current phase is equal to game phase question. Well, we also want to check if it's the server. If multiplayer is server, well, we're going to pick the next question. Pick the next question. Oh my goodness. There we go. Know what we're doing here? Then we're going to put it in a variable called question data. And then we're going to get that from our question database. Question DB. And it's going to be the current question index. Perfect. Now we want to send it to everyone. Perfect. We need to also write this function after we write the call here. It's another sync. It's called sync question RPC with the question data. And we're going to need the text of the question data to put in our label. And then we also need the answers to populate our buttons. Answers. There's that. And we also need what index the question is. Current question index. We'll make this a little bigger. Now we're going to write this sync question RPC. Right underneath here. We'll come down a couple spots. Then we're going to write function to make sure everyone has the right question. There's that. And then it's another going to be an RPC that the server has the authority over. Then also called local, local machine. And we're also going to make it reliable. So now we can rely on it. Now we're going to call this function, well, sync question. And then we're taking that, so what we sent before, we need to take the Q text, question text, and it's going to be the answers. It's the second parameter. And well, the index, question index, right there. So then we're going to update the local index for all the clients. This way everyone knows what question we're on. And we're going to do that with the current question index, and then use the index to do that. Perfect. Then we also need to let everybody know that we did this. We need to emit the signal so the UI can make the update. There we go. So question received, we're going to emit that. We're going to emit the text and the answers. So whoever is listening can get those. All right, make some space and save the script. Now the back end is ready. Now the front end needs to listen. So back in our main game GD script, we're going to make this smaller. We need references to our question UI. So in our question UI here, we need a reference to the label. We're going to put it in our UI section of our onReady. So we're going to drag and drop, control drop that. And we're going to change this label so it's more definitive to question label. Great. We also need our answers of what the player will be able to select. So to get all these, well, we need to take our grid container again, as we have it in here too, but we need it again for the answer buttons. Control drop. Great. Instead of grid container, we're going to change this to answer buttons. And it's not going to be a grid container, it's going to be an array. So in order to get all these buttons here, well, we have our path right to our grid container, but we just need to get the children within this grid container. So this call here will get all 4 of these buttons and put it into this answer buttons array. Great, now we just need to know what to do with them when we have them. So we're going to add another function. Scroll down to the bottom here. Just add it above the debug section. We'll enter down a couple times. And we'll write a function called on question received. It's going to take in the question text and the answers. First thing we want to do is change the label, question label, to, well, the question itself. So deep dive into the inspector text and change it to the question text that's being sent to us. Now we want to loop through our buttons. So for I in range of the answer buttons array, answer, now spell that answer buttons dot size of the array of how many children. So technically you have more, but we have 4 for now. So to go through that, and as it loops through that, we're going to change the text of the index it's currently on. We're going to take the index text and put it in the text of the button. So this button text will be equal to the answers index, just like that. And this is the answers that's being sent through this parameter. We're going to put it into our answer buttons text of the index it's on. Well, now after we have a new question being asked, well, we want to reset the state of the button. So if we're going to disable them after, so there's no double clicking. So reset button state is just you take the answer after it's been populated again, the answer button of the index we're on, and then make sure it is not disabled. Disabled to false. Go and save. Make some space. But now we need to connect the question received in the ready function. So in our filter method here, we can click on ready, scroll down. Now this is a game manager connection. So we can go in the game manager section. All right, game manager dot question received. Or connect that to our function called on question received. Go and save. Now the host talks to clients via the authority RPCs, but clients need to talk back via the any peer RPCs to send their answers. So in our game manager GD script, we're going to add up top here a variable to track scores. So we're out of our question database, enter down, make a new variable called scores. This is going to be curly brackets, and the format inside the curly brackets, well, it's just going to be peer ID score. That's it. Just going to keep track of that and link it to the peer ID. So each player will have their own score. Then we need to create a function called submit answer. It's going to be an RPC. So we'll go in our region of RPCs here. Scroll down to the bottom. Stay in the region for these ones. And it's just going to be called, well, let's focus on the any peer first. So any peer, what that means, make it a little more definitive here. Any peer allows clients to call this on the server. There we go. So the RPC is going to be any peer. And it's going to call the local machine as well as make it a reliable. Perfect. This function is going to be called submit answer. And the submitted answer is going to be, well, the selected index of the answer. Great. Now for security, we're going to set this only the server should process the score. So the client can't update their own score. Okay, so we just need to check if multiplayer dot is server. Well, we're going to take that player ID. So we'll grab that in our player ID variable. And we get that by getting the remote sender again. Multiplayer get remote sender ID. And then we need to get the index of the correct answer. So the correct index, okay, equals the question database. And then it's going to be the current question index. And which one? Well, we want the correct one. So 2 angle brackets there, sections. So we're going to get the current question index and grab the correct answer. Well, now once we have that, well, what we just need to do is see if that's the correct answer that they selected. So if the selected index is equal to the correct index, well, what you want to do is you want to print that the player, we can actually just send the log, and everybody will get it. Send log that the player, oh, that's not in here, the network manager dot send log player space concatenate, change the player ID to a string, player ID plus got it right. Now the player ID will just be the name. What we could do is we could do Steam dot get, oh, that won't work. We'll just do the player ID. That's fine. Player 1 or 2 for now. That's pretty straightforward. We'll keep it that way. So player 1 or 2 got it right. So if not, scores dot has a player ID. Whoops, that goes on this side. Well, if not, if the score doesn't have a player ID, well, then the scores player ID scores angle brackets player ID there is equal to 0, or scores, nope, we need to go back there. So if the scores does not have a player ID, well, the player ID score is going to be 0. If it's the score does have a player ID, well, the scores player ID. It's going to add plus equals 1. Oh, need an underscore there. There we go. Now we're going to add 1 point to the score of the player ID if it has, the scores has the player ID. If it doesn't, it's going to go 0. If the scores does have the player ID, we're going to add 1. Well, now after all that, well, we want to end the round. So we're going to write that function here in a second. We'll just enter down and get out of that if statement. Then we're going to end round. Then right below our end region here, we're going to do something else called a function, well, end round. All right, so now we're going to move to the results UI. So move to results. We do that just by saying change phase RPC, change phase dot RPC, game phase dot results. There we go. I'm going to save that. Now back in our main game GD, we're going to connect the buttons to send this RPC. First, we need a function to disable buttons after answering, and then to submit to the server. So scroll all the way down the bottom again. So after on question received, enter down, we're going to write another function called on answer received, or answer press, pressed index. Okay, then we're going to disable the buttons so we cannot answer twice. Okay, so now we need to loop through the buttons to disable them all. So for button and answer buttons, we need to disable. Button disabled equals true. There we go. We also need to send the choice they made to the server. So send choice to server. And then we just send it through the game manager. Submit answer that we just wrote. And we need to send it the index of the answer pressed. Now we need to do a thing called bind the pressed connect on all the answer buttons. So we need to back up our ready function here. In our button connections, we're going to do, so we're going to write a loop. So for I in range of the answer button array, answer buttons dot size. Notice how big our array is, so it goes through them all properly. And we're going to bind the index, the 0, 1, 2, and 3, to the function call. Just like we do single one at a time, we're going to do them one at a time in a loop for each button. So for each answer button in the index, answer buttons, we're going to call the index for on, and then we're going to call that pressed, and then we're going to connect it. We're going to connect it to, well, the on answer pressed. There we go. We don't need those. We need to dot bind. So bind the index of what we're running through. Now we click on control, bind. Now it shows what it does. It just returns a copy of this callable. And then when called, the bound arguments passed after the arguments are supplied by call. You can do deep dive in there. I can connect this documentation down in the description below. You can deep dive as much as you like. Back in our main game script, now that we're binding every button in the answer buttons array, we've made it to the checkpoint. Let's trace the data path. So the host clicks start. The RPC changes phase, and the host picks a question. Now the RPC sends the text, and the client clicks the answer. The RPC sends the vote, and the host calculates the score. Then the RPC changes phase to results. Now if we do our game here, run project, we're going to host a new game. Now we should be able to just start the quiz. asks us, what engine is this? Well, is it Godot, Unity, Unreal, or Game Maker? It's definitely Godot. So we click Godot, and now we have our results. Look at that. The loop is closed. Now we just need to reset it. So finally, the game needs to loop. When the results are done, the host needs to be able to click a button to start the next round and one to return to the lobby. But crucially, only the host should be able to see this button. We're going to link into our next round button we created in the first video. So in our game manager, GD, we're going to add the reset logic. Now this function does not need to be an RPC itself because it calls the change phase RPC, which is networked. So we go down to the bottom here, after reset player data, we're going to write another function called reset game. Okay. First thing we're going to do here is advance the question. Advance question. And then the current question, index, plus equals 1. Then after we do that, we need to check and see if we reach the end of our question index. If we reach the end, so if the current question index is greater than or equal to the question database size, well, it's game over, right? So we have no more questions. So we're going to reset the current question index to 0. There we go. Then after that, well, we want to reset the scores. I'm going to reset the scores when at the end. So we're going to take the scores and we're just going to clear it. There we go. And then we need to remember that we locked the lobby. So let's unlock the door so friends can join. We don't lock everybody out. So we just need to check if the multiplayer is the server. Since it's the host, we only want the host to be able to do that. It's a multiplayer.isServer. Well, then we want to call the network manager, set lobby lock. Set lobby lock. We want to set that to false. Now that we're unlocked, we can go out of this if statement and we want to change the phase RPC to game phase. Ooh, not that one. Game phase dot lobby. That'll get us back to our lobby. Now, if none of this is true, we still have more questions. Well, it's the next round. Great. Then just change phase, RPC, dot RPC, and then we want to go back to another question. Well, now we need a reference to that button. So we're going to save this. Back in our main game GD script, go up to the top. We're going to make this smaller. We need to find our next round button. Should be in our results UI. Next round button. Put that in our UI section here. Control drop. Now for this, we need to connect this signal in our ready here. So how we do that? We do it just like we did for the one that we connected a function inside of the connection. You don't remember? So in our button connections, we're going to do our next round button pressed. We're going to connect that function to the reset game function in our game manager. So when we connect this, we're going to connect it to the function of our game manager, reset game. So our next round is pressed. It's going to do all our logic of that function we just wrote. We're going to make sure we're also hiding this next round button just for the host or just for the client. We want the host to be the one to see it. So in our on phase changed, so here's our on phase changed. We're going to go into that. And all this hide stuff's good. But once we get to our results phase here, we're going to go in there. We're going to enter down. What we're going to do is we're going to make sure only the host can see the button. So we're going to check if the server, if the multiplayer is a server, so we'll know it's the host. Multiplayer is server. Well, the next round button, well, we want to show it simply. And then, well, if it's not, well, we just want to hide it. Whoops, forgot the colon there. So next round button. Next round button. Want to hide. Great. And also in here, we want to set the logic to say next round or return to lobby. So if we're out of questions, we want to return to the lobby. So when we click that button, it will return to lobby and say it returns to lobby, or it'll say next round if there's more questions. And we should do that by finding out what our question index is. So if game manager.current question index is, well, our next question index +1 is greater than or equal to the game manager, greater than or equal to the game manager database, question database dot size. There we go. Well, then we're going to go down in there and say next round button dot text should say return to lobby. Or else, if there's more, we're going to say next round button dot text equals next round. Great. We go ahead and give that a test. Click our play run project. We're going to start a quiz, or we're going to host a game first. Watch, notice we should not see our start quiz at the beginning. So we want to go in our lobby UI, make sure our start game button is hidden by default. Let's make sure that there, because we don't want to see that beforehand. So hidden by default for the start game button. Now if we play, shouldn't see our start quiz. Perfect. So to host, now we want to start quiz. What engine is this? It's Godot. Now we're the winner. Well, we have another question. So it says next round. Next round, which RPC mode means server only? Well, we know it's authority. Great. No more questions. Return to lobby. Now we're back in our lobby. We can do a quiz again, or we can disconnect. We now have a closed game loop. The host can start the game, questions are synced to all the clients, players can submit answers, and the server calculates the score before moving everyone to the results screen. The skeleton of the game is complete, but it's a bit dry. We have no timers, the results just appear instantly, and we don't know who won. In the final video, we're going to add the polish, timers, visual avatars for answers, and a wait for all system to make the gameplay feel smooth and professional. Now if you found this helpful at all or fun, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. It really helps out the channel. And thank you to all our current and past Patreon and Ko-fi members. Your generous support keeps the channel moving. If you want early access to tutorials, source code, or suggesting future tutorials, please consider becoming a member yourself. The links are in the description. I'm Spaghetti Syntax, and remember, finished, not perfect, fail fast, fail often, always stay curious, and I'll see you at the next checkpoint.